Hi, my name is Cindy Rang with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington, and you can find us at fabricpatch.net. So I'm going to talk to you for just a couple of minutes about flying geese. Flying geese is the third most popular unit in quilting, right behind squares and half square triangles. I love flying geese, but some people are a little nervous about them because a flying geese unit has we come to the point on both of our bottom corners, and then up here it is critical that we have that little 1/4 inch seam allowance up here at the top, because what's going to happen is when you sew that together and open that up, this point is going to come to an exact point. Some people have a little bit of trouble with that 1/4 inch seam allowance there, and they end up blunting some of their points. The other thing that's unique about a flying geese unit is that the width is twice the size of the height. So your flying geese units will either be 5 by 2.5, 6 by 3, 2 by 1, whatever they'll end up being. So there's a couple different ways to do it. I'm going to show you that some of the more common ways that you might find in a pattern is you might see that somebody's going to tell you to start with a square, cut that square in half on the diagonal, have another square that you cut in half on the diagonal. They're going to tell you to take this unit, which you will sew together, open it up, sew the next one together, open it up. When you do that, you just want to make sure that you press it well and that you do have that 1/4 inch seam allowance at the top. This is my least favorite method of making a flying geese because you end up dealing with biases. When you press it and you go to trim it, you might not have a lot of extra space left over. Another way that you can end up doing it is to do your two corners where you stitch and flip. And so the way that you do this is whatever the size of your unit is, this might be a 2.5 by 5. You start with another strip that is 2.5, and then you have to add a 1/2 inch. So we might end up at 5.5. Cut that in half so that you end up with 2 squares. If you're following a pattern, they'll tell you exactly the size of this rectangle and the size of these 2 squares. And what you'll do is you'll sew on this diagonal, trim that off, and press that open, and then you'll do the other one. If you look at this one, you can see that that's what we did here. We sewed, cut that off, press that open. Here's our little line. We'll lay that down. Sew on this one, trim that off, press that open. This one is a little bit easier because you're not dealing with biases, but the problem with this one is you have quite a lot of waste that's left over. You can go ahead and turn those into half square triangles, but sometimes the other thing that can happen is if you don't quite have this exactly where it needs to go, or you're not quite sewing on the line, you could end up with not your full 1/4 inch up here. So my favorite method is called the no waste method. And this is it. You'll see there's all sorts of charts. And in fact, we have attached a little paper for you in the description that'll show you. You start with 1 square and 4 small squares to end up with 4 flying geese. Your large square is what the color of your goose will be. Your 4 small squares are your background blocks. So the way that you do this is you start with your square, right side up. We have our small squares that are right side down. We're going to put 1 in this corner, 1 in this corner, and then we're going to draw a line from point to point on the diagonal. As we draw that line, you'll see that we're also intersecting through that point. Draw your line with whatever appropriate marking utensil you like. It might be a pencil, it might be a water erase marker. I tend to like the iron-off marker. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and I like to use my 1/4 inch foot. It has the little blade on it. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on one side of this line, flip around, and sew a 1/4 inch on this side of that line, using my 1/4 inch mark to line up to make sure I'm right where I should be. I'm going to sew those 2 and I'll be right back. Okay, I've done that. I've sewn 1/4 inch on both sides of that line. Now what I'm going to do is on that line that I drew, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. What you end up with is this goofy looking thing. So I'm going to go ahead and press it. Okay, so I've pressed these two odd looking guys. Now I'm going to take my other two squares, put one in this corner, put one in this corner. Lay this down. And you can mark it before you put it in the corner, whichever you prefer. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the sewing machine, sew 1/4 inch on this side, sew 1/4 inch on that side, on both of these. Okay, here are my two pieces. So I've sewn my 1/4 inch all the way around. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to lay this out and cut right on that line. Should I just let you see that? And then I'm going to go ahead and press it open. So and this is why it's called the no waste method, because there isn't any waste. We are going to go ahead and trim this up just a tiny bit, just to trim off all of those dog ears that are on the corners and on the edges. But otherwise, you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to make some half square triangles to go with it. And you end up with four identical flying geese. So then what I'll do is I'll just take my ruler. And it's kind of nice because you can sort of verify the size that you're going to end up with. You can see it on here that this is a 3 by 1.5. Trim all of those guys off. And you end up with these perfect flying geese units. So this is the no waste method, but I just want to show you, and again, people who teach this and show this in their pattern, they will give you the size that you start with in terms of your large square and your small squares. But sometimes what will happen is you might end up with a pattern and it's telling you that they want you to make a 1.5 by 3 inch geese, and they're going to tell you to do that by by doing this method. And if you just want to change that out and make your geese using a different method, we really like this ruler. This ruler is by Lazy Girls, and what's nice is it kind of shows you the whole technique, talks about exactly how to do it. It gives you all of the measurements for all of the different sizes of flying geese. But what's really nice is you don't have to remember all of this. You don't have to do any kind of math in your head. You don't have to worry where 1 7/8 or 3 3/8 is on your ruler. All you have to do is you take the ruler, and this might be hard for you to see, but you have to decide what size flying geese you want. So do you want the 3 1/4 by 1.5? Do you want the 2 by 4? Do you want the 2 3/4 by 5.5? Whatever size flying geese you want, you see what letter that is. So if I'm going to choose the 3 1/4 by 1.5, I have letter A. So I need one of these squares. And down here, it verifies this is my 3 1/4 by 1.5, and I need 4 of the small ones. So all I have to do is take my fabric and using my ruler, line it up on that one line. So I'm going to cut my 1 A block, and then I'm going to cut, flipping it around using the dashed lines. And she tells you to do this with a strip. I tend to just grab my little leftover piece of fabric and just make it easy so that I don't have to worry about what size that is. It just makes it easy, kind of brainless. Okay, so now I know that I have my 1 large square and my 4 small squares to be able to make 4 3 1/4 by 1 1/2 flying geese. I'll end up with 4. I'll make however many I need for my pattern. And again, all of these sizes are on here. It is it's about a $20 ruler, maybe a little more, $24 ruler. We do have them at 10% off on our website. We just really like it. I am not a huge gadget girl, but I make a lot of flying geese. And so what happens is whatever size the flying geese is that I have to make, I know that that size, whatever they're telling me to make, I know that I can go ahead and change it out for a no waste method and end up with perfect flying geese and lots of leftover fabric. So anyway, hope you like making flying geese. If you do, maybe you'll give this a whirl. If you're not sure about that, just find some squares, make a few, and see what you think about the no waste method. Maybe you'll need the ruler just to make it a little easier. Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.